A cult doesn't need robes, rituals, or religion. All it needs is one person who refuses to feel shame and a room full of people too polite to stop him. Cartman didn't hijack the classroom with fear. He did it with comfort. While everyone else was chasing approval, Cartman chased control, not by force, but by identifying the one thing no one in that room could resist: the desire to belong. That's what makes it a cult. Not the symbols, not the slogans, but it is an emotional trade. Safety in exchange for surrender. Most people miss it because we are conditioned to think cults look like chaos, loud, aggressive, extreme. But the most effective ones do not feel dangerous at all. They feel like order, like clarity, like someone finally taking charge. Cartman understands this better than the adults around him. He doesn't lead by merit. He leads by eliminating friction. He speaks the loudest, decides the rules, sets the tone, and before anyone even realizes what's happening, the group defaults to his authority, not because they believe in him, but because it's easier than arguing. And that's how power really works in weak systems. It's not seized, it's absorbed from the silence of others. In a classroom where identity is fragile and authority is inconsistent, Cartman offers what every cult promises: certainty. He makes the rules clear. He decides what's funny, who's in, who's out. He builds a hierarchy so crude and visible that no one questions it. They just adjust to survive inside it. The teacher becomes irrelevant, the boundaries dissolve, and a new logic takes over: Cartman's. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most people go along with it, not because they are brainwashed, but because the alternative confrontation is messier, riskier, less socially rewarding. That is how the cult forms, not through belief, through emotional convenience. And Cartman knows this instinctively. He does not need loyalty, he only needs momentum. And as long as no one pushes back, as long as everyone is a little afraid of being the first to say no, his influence spreads like smoke, unseen but everywhere. People think cults are rare. They are not. They form anytime a person realizes that charisma plus boldness plus shamelessness equals dominance, especially in rooms where no one else wants to be responsible. And Cartman, he does not want to lead out of principle. He wants to lead because it means he never has to follow. He turns the classroom into a cult, not by corrupting others, but by simply refusing to care. And when no one stops him, that indifference becomes the new moral center. Cartman doesn't manipulate people by outsmarting them. He controls them by simplifying their world. That is the first step of any cult leader. Reduce complexity into absolutes. Good versus evil, us versus them, loyalty versus betrayal, no nuance, just clarity, because the moment people stop thinking, they start obeying. And Cartman's brilliance, whether intentional or not, is that he doesn't argue. He asserts. He doesn't convince you. He creates an environment where resistance feels pointless. And once you have accepted that, even passively, you have already joined. Not his side, his system. See, cults aren't built on belief, they're built on need. And Cartman is a master at identifying need, the quiet, unspoken gaps inside people. Some need approval, some need direction, some need to feel superior, some just want to be safe. Cartman gives them all something. To the insecure, he offers validation. To the outcast, he offers inclusion as long as they play by his rules. To the angry, he offers permission, and to the passive, he offers protection, a chance to be part of something louder than their own doubts. He doesn't inspire, he exploits. And it works because most people don't recognize manipulation when it feels like comfort. That's the genius of Cartman's influence. It doesn't look like fear, it looks like belonging. But underneath it, everything is conditional. You're allowed to laugh as long as you're laughing with him. You're allowed to speak as long as it doesn't challenge him. You're allowed to stay as long as you never question the structure. Step out of line, you're humiliated. Stay in line, you're rewarded or at least ignored. And in weak social systems like a classroom without leadership or a peer group without backbone, that's enough to create a hierarchy. One where no one's officially in charge, but everyone knows who decides what happens. That's not an accident. It's a psychological ecosystem. Cartman creates a space where his emotions dictate reality. If he's angry, the group reacts. If he's pleased, the group relaxes. His mood becomes the weather system, unpredictable predictable but inescapable. Over time, people adjust their behavior preemptively, trying to avoid conflict, trying to keep the peace. That's not peace, that's control. It's the same tactic used by real-world manipulators. Flood the environment with enough volatility that the group starts regulating itself, not out of loyalty, but out of exhaustion. And once that happens, Cartman doesn't need to punish dissent. The group will do it for him. That's how cults sustain themselves, through self-policing, through internalized fear, through learned silence. And the scariest part? It feels normal because people adapt faster than they question. You don't realize the room has changed until someone tries to speak freely and suddenly it feels wrong. Cartman doesn't need charisma, he just needs everyone else to stop caring more than he does. And the reason he can pull this off, even as a child, is because he operates without shame. He doesn't second guess. He doesn't reflect. He doesn't apologize. And in a system built on politeness, on social norms, on mutual restraint, a person without shame becomes unstoppable. Because shame is what keeps most of us in check. Cartman skipped that part, and that's why he wins. He can lie without blinking. He can insult without guilt. He can contradict himself, deny it, and double down, all within the same breath, and never lose ground. And when the people around him finally push back, he weaponizes victimhood. He pretends he's misunderstood. He cries just enough to shift the attention away from what he did and onto how he feels about being confronted. That's not childish. That's a classic manipulative strategy. Turn accountability into an attack, and suddenly you are the one who deserves sympathy. It's exhausting, and that's the point, because when you are exhausted, you stop resisting, you start compromising, you start laughing at things that are not funny because it is easier than fighting. And in that moment, the cult is not just Cartman's, it is yours too. You are maintaining it, feeding it, apologizing for it, all while pretending it is just easier this way. But that is how the structure wins, not by force, but by wearing you down. That is how bad systems survive, by making the cost of opposition feel heavier than the weight of submission. And Cartman knows instinctively that if you keep people distracted, divided, or entertained, they will not even notice they have surrendered. They will think they are in control. They will think they are in a joke. They will think it is just Cartman being Cartman. Until it is too late to speak freely, until it is too late to leave, until silence feels like the only sane option. And then it is not just a classroom anymore. It is a closed system, a thought loop, a cult. Cartman did not invent these tactics, he just exposed how easily they worked. Because the cult he builds in the classroom isn't an anomaly, it's a reflection of how modern groups behave, of how adults enforce conformity, of how online communities fracture into echo chambers where questioning the leader feels like betrayal. We like to think we've outgrown cult dynamics, that we are too smart, too educated, too ironic. But scroll long enough and you'll find Cartman everywhere, in influencers, politicians, group chats, corporate Slack threads, people who create loyalty not through wisdom, but through noise, through dominance, through shameless strategic absurdity. They flood the space until truth feels optional. They create an environment where the worst behavior becomes the new normal because no one wants to be the one who kills the vibe. Where cruelty is brushed off as just jokes, where dissent is punished with silence, mockery, or worse, exile. That's not leadership, that's cult logic. The same emotional levers Cartman pulls are being pulled every day. Safety, inclusion, fear of exclusion, in comment sections, in algorithm-curated feeds, in digital communities that start as friendships and slowly become belief systems. You don't need to chant slogans or drink Kool-Aid to be in a cult. You just need to stop asking questions. That's the danger. Because cults don't always look like cages. Sometimes they look like content. They feel like belonging. They sound like inside jokes. They reward loyalty, punish ambiguity, and always need an enemy. And the more absurd they become, the more loyal their followers grow. Not because they believe more, but because they've already committed too much to turn back. It's easier to double down than admit you were fooled. Cartman doesn't need to be real to be relevant because his tactics are already everywhere, and worse, they're working. We excuse them because they're funny. We defend them because we recognize ourselves. We downplay the harm because calling it out would make us the buzzkill, so we stay silent. We scroll past. We laugh. And in doing so, we become part of the structure, not victims. Participants, because cults don't thrive on belief, they thrive on complicity. And if you're waiting for someone louder, smarter, or braver to fix it, you're already in too deep. The uncomfortable truth: Cartman didn't turn a classroom into a cult. He just reminded us how quickly people give up power when it's easier than keeping it, and how many of us are still doing it.